With everyone fighting for attention, how can your business stand out and connect with customers? Easy, with Constant Contact. Constant Contact's award-winning marketplace platform has helped millions of small businesses stand out, stay top of mind, and see big results fast. It's okay if you don't know much about marketing. Constant Contact's writing assistant tools and automation features help you craft messaging and say the right things at the right time. I used this to help write and send my email newsletters, and you should too. So get going and start growing your business today with a free trial at ConstantContact.com. Just go to ConstantContact.com right now. Constant Contact, helping the small stand tall. ConstantContact.com.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Monday, April 15th, 2024, as we bring you a new episode on this tax day. The Chicago White Sox made history this weekend after getting swept by the Cincinnati Reds in resounding fashion. The 2-13 White Sox now have the worst start ever by a team in this franchise in its 120 plus year of existence. What a time to be alive. We knew this team wasn't going to be good in 2024, but we are looking at unthinkable badness with this squad. Why is that the case? We'll discuss what the issues are, talk about help coming for the White Sox as Tommy Pham is close to signing with the White Sox, and Nick Nastrini is making his Major League Baseball debut on Monday. Lots to discuss, so let's get started. Joining me are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. So Jim, again, history! I wish I had that voice clip from Hawk Harrelson. But the worst start ever in White Sox history. What a time to be alive. And I kind of feel bad for Chris Getz because we talked about in the offseason, and I think you nailed it from the beginning on what Getz's plan was. But 15 games in, that plan is not working, and it doesn't appear to be working anytime soon, Jim.
I don't feel bad for Getz because he knew what he was getting into. He was the closest thing to it, and he sold Jerry Reinsdorf on either a vision or a shared storyline that they could use as to why they didn't interview anybody else. You know, he can get them up and running. He can, you know, he's with him, we won't have to waste a year. And the result is, 2-13 after 15 games, terrible pitching staff, terrible offense, making a lot of mistakes, which they said they weren't going to do. They said they were going to be better at processing the game, making faster decisions. The decisions look just as slow. The Cincinnati Reds make them look really slow. 6 stolen bases, stealing bases when they're picked off, stealing bases when the throw beat them there. You know, errors across the outfield. I think Luis Roberts' absence and Yohan Moncada's as well has really fundamentally ruined the idea that they would make fewer mistakes in the field. And so, 15 games in, almost a tenth of the season over, and can't wait for the other 9/10 of the season to go right along with it because this is pretty abysmal.
James, Chris Getz spoke to you guys on Friday. What's the messaging coming from Getz, and where is his hat at? And maybe this is something you have to speculate after getting a chance to talk to him before this series started, because I can't imagine no GM would ever want to start their full regular season 2-13. But this has got to be, in some levels, heartbreaking for him that everything that he thought of, maybe hoping could work out, get some good luck on your side. Instead, major injuries, bad luck, and the veterans are not playing up to expectations, and even some of the core guys like Andrew Benintendi and Andrew Vaughn are really struggling to start the season.
Yeah, I think it's worse than he would expect. I don't think he expected to be threatening records or anything like that. There's obviously a lot of scrambling around, but as much as I think he's done to push optimism and talk about a brand of baseball they're trying to establish, and they do hope that's happening. they expect it to be bad this year internally. Like it's not. I mean, and as much as like these injuries like all happening in rapid succession probably took them by surprise. Like they also knew that like Eloy Jimenez and like Yoan Moncada were not like reliable to stay healthy or play a full 162, and that's kind of why they're moving on from like on a structural like what the next core of the team will be. So as much as like everything is like hovering around like 10 percentile outcome in seemingly countless parts of the roster, I don't think this is like an identity shattering like start in the way that like last year's start was, where like this is supposed to be a contending year that dictates a little bit of what they do the next season or how they move in free agency or how much budget they have. Like this is obviously like god awful baseball, and you definitely have a chairman who his reaction to the short term could be unpredictable if you really make it like particularly unwatchable all year round. But I don't know if this is like I don't think heartbreaking is probably the word I would use to describe the moods of Chris Getz or how he's really talked about this. I think they knew they take their lumps. I think, they could probably point to the Garrett Crochet project and think like, wow, that's better than we expected and is more meaningful than necessarily the 1-year reclamation attempts on Flexen and Soroka, as much as that kind of really just takes the knees out of like, we're going to show that we can turn around veteran starters and do it on the cheap. And they can just do a couple of bullpens with Bannister and they'll be good again. I don't know if I think the Robert issue and is probably more meaningful to, the long-term mission and what they have to think about with their core than, they can't get Nicky Lopez back to 2021 production.
Yeah, the Flexen and Soroka, the Cincinnati Reds kind of blew up that idea over the weekend. The Reds did not have any issue hitting off of Flexen and Soroka this weekend. Actually, the Reds didn't have a problem hitting much. I mean, there's one bad inning against Garrett Crochet. Crochet gave up 5 runs. He could not get through 5 innings, but Crochet still piled up 10 strikeouts. It was the only inning the Reds scored in, but they won 5-0. The Cincinnati Reds outscored the White Sox 27-5 in 3 games. That's how uncompetitive the baseball was this weekend on the south side of Chicago if you didn't catch any of the games between the White Sox and the Reds. And Jim, I'm noticing a tone change, maybe a campaign messaging change from Pedro Grifol, going from we're going to be prepared to kick your ass every single night to let's just try to enjoy the game of baseball. Maybe Pedro Grifol does listen to this podcast, as we do not want to kill the love of baseball for White Sox fans. And damn, this White Sox team will test your love of baseball this year. What do you make of that, with Grifol going in that direction now?
I wondered if he was projecting.
Oh.
Like if he's saying that I don't want to lose the love for baseball. I don't want to hate this. But he's kind of like just trying to spread it out across the entire roster as a way to disguise it a little bit, saying, I hope these guys don't. And by these guys, I mean me, because this is, if I had hair to tear out, I would tear it out right now, but I don't. So you just have to watch my beard getting grayer when I have the beard to go with. It's, I suppose it's better than blind hope or, because he said, give this team 2 weeks. That's what he said in September. Like once we have 2 weeks or a couple weeks in the books for the 2024 team, then he can judge what it's all about. So I guess he is holding up his end of the bargain there by judging the team and by saying it's fair to form an opinion about what these guys can and can't do. And because of that, now he's maybe just trying to figure out something else to say. It's not going to be effective. I mean, there really is nothing he can say. And I know that James gets this question a lot from the Sox Machine community, saying, do we have to hear what Grifol says? Is there a point in relaying his quotes? Like, there's just nothing here. I can ask an AI generator to come up with a Grifol answer to the situation. It's probably...
That was really good.
As accurate, or at least have the same nutritional value as a Grifol answer in real life. His answers could be shorter, I think. Like he does speak paragraphs sometimes and keeps going when it's just like, oh, we're just hoping for a few sentences on what you hope somebody could achieve. And then it's like minute 2. And it's like, we have hour-long podcasts somehow, but as Josh mentioned, we are padding it with talking about other teams in order to, make it somewhat enjoyable. Maybe Grifol's going to start doing the same thing. Like, hey, do you see those Reds? Wow, it's a lot of fun watching LA De La Cruz. Boy, I wonder how they're going to compete in the Central. Like, maybe his attitude will change towards like, I really liked watching this other team kick our asses. These guys are really special. Come to Guaranteed Rate Field to watch at least one major league team that is not us right now. Maybe that's going to be how he swings it. But, I guess I welcome it as a pivot to like something besides we think this team can still contend. It's just you wonder how long he'll be allowed to keep it going. And with Jerry Reinsdorf not firing coaches mid-season, I'm prepared for it to be the entire season because that's just how he operates. Also, he welcomes Tony La Russa's influence. Like he said, this is great. I love Tony. Give me all the Tony, like, whether that was performative or like how he actually thinks. Like, I imagine that's something to appeals to Reinsdorf because La Russa's around the team all the time. So, I don't know if you'll find another manager who at least outwardly welcomes La Russa's influence like that. But either way, like it just, it's a pivot that could work for a little bit. You just can't go for, 5 months of, we hope they still love the game. Like month 4 of, do we still love the game is, if anybody's listening, is not going to be heard.
Is another angle to those quotes, James, is trying to alleviate stress and I assume anxiety for White Sox players, because what's the vibe? The vibes cannot be good. When you walk into that clubhouse post game over the weekend, they cannot be good. Like watching some of the post game interviews on NBC Sports Chicago, like Nicky Lopez looks like he lost a loved one. He lost a dog. Like he looked very sad answering questions post game on Sunday. So I assume it must be as bad as I'm assuming, and Grifol is trying to get these guys, at least in some way, to reduce the stress and just focus on enjoying the game of baseball.
It's kind of like alongside this narrative that you're hearing from everybody about like pressing. Pressing is like the mind killer that everyone's talking about all the time. Which like, yes, things are going wrong. You're going to press. People are out. You're going to try to make up for them. Like it's a very natural thing to like talk about, but it's like the one thing to center around because like other real adjustments or like other counter moves or influxes of talent, like obviously those aren't options. So you have to like make it some sort of mental thing that can be overcome. So the past couple of days of just like keeps adding up where it just sounds like playing for the Chicago White Sox is the most pressure packed thing that anybody can do in professional sports, from the sounds of it. But yeah, it's a bad situation. And yeah, that's the thing. But like, Michael Soroka was like obviously very upset with himself for walks, which obviously were not, his staple coming up through his career. And there was a little bit of like that being foreshadowed with Grifol before the game where he was saying like our offense has been so bad that like it's affecting our pitchers who feel like they have to be too fine all the time. And we definitely saw that be an issue with Kopech a lot. But like one way to interpret it is like Soroka's operating with like diminished stuff from like his peak, and it's just going to be hard for him to operate with the same level of aggressiveness in the zone that he did before. And ideally, this is just like him kind of finding his way through it, or maybe it's just kind of why he wasn't someone that Atlanta was like could really feel like they could bank on anymore, and why he was like this available, theoretically low risk because the season doesn't mean anything kind of gamble the White Sox are able to take on somebody with a lot of name value and pedigree who has had success before but isn't really going to be able to right the ship. And it's funny you mentioned Nicky Lopez because I was talking to him about it pregame about like, I get asked about what's the clubhouse all the time. And I have to say, like, well, after losses, it's quiet because every clubhouse after losses is quiet. It'd be awkward. It'd be uncouth to be talking loudly or joking around post game in some big way. I think he effectively hit the emotions of how they feel. Like he said, before and after the game, like it's a really tough stretch that he's, you've seen guys get out to slow starts, but it's really rare to see like seemingly a whole roster of guys getting out to a slow start. All apologies to Gavin Sheets, could be excluded from this as the privilege he's earned himself. But he says it's still a positive group in terms of like they get along. It's not like a clubhouse full of conflicts. He says like the tight knit thing from spring that's like still true. It's just like they're getting beaten all the time, and they can't be cheery about that. They can't be upbeat. The games that they've won, it's like it's like the last day of school in the clubhouse after. Like it's like ecstasy. It's like you're just hearing screaming for minutes on end waiting outside. Like it's clearly a group that like has some understanding of what they're up against, and obviously is appreciated when they have had good moments. But I feel like it's going to just compile over the course of the year, especially with so many guys who are so quote unquote fighting for their careers, as they said. Like clearly it's not trending a good way for some people, and some guys you're going to see them drop off over the course of the year, maybe because Tommy Pham takes their roster spot. And I think that could make things more tense or make things more difficult or harrowing over the course of the season as it adds up. Whereas right now it's still like, we like this group, but it's not trending well, as opposed to like actually facing the consequences that's going to bring about.
So what's fueling this historic start for the Chicago White Sox in 2024? Well, offensively, we're going to keep harping on this. They've only scored 34 runs in 15 games. That's the lowest amount of runs scored by a White Sox team since they have lowered the mound back in 1969. The White Sox offense has only hit 8 home runs. That ranks dead last in Major League Baseball. And the team OPS is 583. Again, that's dead last in Major League Baseball. The White Sox as a team are hitting 200 with a 273 on base percentage and slugging 310. On the starting pitching front, the starting pitcher ERA is 5.6. That's 28th in Major League Baseball. The starting pitchers have allowed 14 home runs this season. That's tied for most in Major League Baseball. The bullpen ERA, not too shabby, 4.19, but they have 37 walks. That's the third most out of relievers in Major League Baseball. And the White Sox relievers, maybe this is just part of the bad luck. They have allowed 12 unearned runs, while just one unearned run allowed by a White Sox starter. So that goes back to the sloppiness that Jim was mentioning. That sloppiness really comes into the fold for the White Sox, seemingly when the relievers enter into the game, which obviously means it's in the second half of the game and the most critical times of the games. And that's why the White Sox, for the most part, are 2-13. Everything's kind of a mess right now. And a new face could be joining the White Sox soon. According to Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, Tommy Pham is close to signing with the Chicago White Sox. This is going to be, at first, a minor league contract, as Tommy Pham has some rust to break off, possibly start with Charlotte because Pham is out of options. He is 36 years old, so while he breaks off some rust in AAA, when the White Sox deem him ready, they can call him up. Last year, Pham played 129 games in 2023. He had a total of 1.5 WAR, according to Baseball Reference. He started the season with the New York Mets. He had a 125 OPS plus with the Mets in 79 games, where he hit 268, 348, and slugged 472. Very good slash line. With the Diamondbacks, a drop-off in production. He had a 95 OPS plus in 50 games with the D-backs, hit just 241 with a 304 on-base percentage and slugged 415. Pham struggled for the most part of the postseason until the World Series. Pham had a big World Series for the Diamondbacks. He was 8 for 19. That's a 421 batting average. He hit a home run. He had 2 RBIs, and he had 3 doubles. Unfortunately, the Diamondbacks lost that World Series to the Texas Rangers, but Tommy Pham stepped up in a big way. Let's speculate. James, why are the White Sox considering signing Tommy Pham now?
They batted Kevin Pillar cleanup in 2 games out of first 2 games of the Red Series. Though I didn't realize Kevin Pillar has a 389 OBP right now. So technically he's been one of their best contributors, but they're short on credible major league bats. And as much as like they can't really replace like the positional utility of Robert and Moncada, and theoretically the one thing you're going to get back this month ideally is Eloy Jimenez, who is the least positionally useful bat you can get, but like they're just not filling out a full lineup in terms of like actually credible threats, and he would give them one. If you took this roster right now and swapped him in, you'd probably think of replacing Pillar with him, and that gives you a credible power hitting right-handed outfielder, and obviously makes you a little bit more viable against left-handed starters than they were in the first two games of the Red Series, where you saw Corey Lee DHing and a bunch of other stuff where they just didn't really have much to match up with. You called up Zach Remillard, so you could put Lopez and Shoemake on the bench. They just don't have a lot of good options to go right there. But I imagine if you're Tommy Pham and you're coming off playing in the World Series and signing with the White Sox, the idea is that you're going to take over an everyday role. And that's not an unrealistic thing for him, even if you think like, oh, they're committed to Robbie Grossman to lead off, or they're going to want to play Eloy. I guess what it makes interesting, and we're probably weeks away or months away knowing Pedro, this conversation is like, how long does Andrew Benintendi have to struggle before, Tommy Pham, like, even just hitting a league average rate like he's done a lot in the past, becomes someone that's like, that gives us a better chance to win, him starting left field, than the guy that we have signed for another 3 years after this. Ideally, Benintendi like puts up something. He had good final two swings on Sunday that suggests he's not, just completely gone. But I think his performance and Andrew Vaughn's performance have both kind of made that question seem a lot more valid than it would have even been considered in spring.
Yeah, because James mentioned a lot of guys that could be in trouble of losing their job with Tommy Pham. But right now, your outfield for the White Sox is Andrew Benintendi, Dominic Fletcher, and Robbie Grossman in right field, which we've also seen Grossman take some playing time in left field. But that is your outfield, and that's not a very athletic outfield except for Fletcher, but I think he's undersized at center.
They all committed errors on Sunday.
They sure
left,
did.
Right, and center.
Well, Fletcher, they counted that as a double, but I think he would say that he should have made that catch. He did make a very nice catch at the warning track. Out of those three, I am least concerned about Dominic Fletcher. I think he's doing okay in center field. Obviously, there's a drop-off between he and Luis Robert. But it does raise the question, like, let's say Tommy Pham needs a couple of weeks in Charlotte, and it's May 1st. And Chris Getz is like, all right, Mike Clevenger's ready to go. Tommy Pham's ready to go. We're going to add these two guys to the roster. But Pham, if you want to maybe trade him before the deadline, he needs run. He needs at-bats. He needs starts. So how do you think he could work that out, especially if Eloy comes back and if Eloy's healthy? Then it gets really weird. Like, who's getting at-bats here on this terrible White Sox offense between Benintendi and Grossman?
I think enough can change with this White Sox lineup for better or certainly for worse, to where I'm going to save that conversation for like May guy versus April guy, because, the Grossman can run out of juice, or Pilar can look done, or, I think the more interesting options are like, James mentioned Benintendi in terms of if he's this bad, if he's like OPS plus of 7 bad, how long can they keep that going? And then that becomes like a micro question and then a macro question of like, how long is he around? The 3 more years of this, and he's just completely irrelevant to everything the White Sox are trying to do. So there's that. I think the other two interesting subplots here are Kevin Pillar, like 10 years of service time within reach. He needs like 100 days on the roster, reach 10 years. And if he doesn't hack it with this roster, he could be like in a Sal Fasano type thing where he's just trying to like, hook on with anybody just to get like the few days he has left. And also, like, given how the way like Getz cut him in spring training, re-sign him for less, like I can see like Getz cutting him with 2 days to go, just saying like, you'll never know what you did to piss me off, but it really did. So live with that for the rest of your life, Kevin Pillar. So there's that. The other one is like Dominic Fletcher. Like, he's not on safe ground right now. He's playing a little bit better. The hits are starting to come. Defense is okay, although sometimes like it's hard to know like if the routes look shaky or if it's just from going from a 6'2" center fielder to a 5'7" center fielder, that it looks a lot more frenetic out there. Like the steps are there are a lot more steps for him in a route. And when he's like has a lot more steps, like there's a lot more ways his routes can kind of wobble a little bit. Whereas like, when you have Robert going like in a smooth straight line versus like, I don't know how I should count, like, look at a StatCast and see equal catches of ground covered to see how many more steps Fletcher takes. But just they're shaky routes, and it could just be like a height thing. But he's okay in center, way better in right that we've seen so far, but like, he's going to have to keep playing center for the time being. So like if he's hitting in the low 200s, not really getting on base and the power's not there, and he has, the White Sox can send him down. Like, do they do that? Do they, accept like a step back on a Christian Mena trade? Because they didn't have to trade Christian Mena. So this is kind of it would already be a referendum on Getz's talent evaluation or priorities if they're sending Fletcher down. But those are the two, I think, fascinating subplots here. The rest are like, will a veteran, will Robbie Grossman stop drawing walks when like he's not hitting for extra bases because pitchers are attacking him more, or is Kevin Pillar done? Or just it's all bad. And it's kind of weird that like, although the outfield is as bad as it is, like there are playable or at least credible options with name brand quality that you can make arguments for having each round. Whereas like if Pham could play second base, like, or shortstop or something like that, it'd be a lot easier to say like, we're not attached to Paul DeYoung, or Nicky Lopez doesn't look like he has it. Have all the playing time you want.
Jim, I don't see, like, if you cut Benintendi, maybe another team picks him up, but I don't see Jerry Reinsdorf being okay with that much dead money. It's a lot of dead money, right? He's got, 3 years left on his deal?
Yeah, 3.5, yeah.
We're talking over $50 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, $50 million. Yeah, I don't see that happening. So Benintendi's going to be around, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he needs to be on the field. But could that be an influence where Jerry's putting pressure on Getz, like, hey, we're paying this guy all this money. Why is he sitting on the bench? Just going back in White Sox history, I don't know if they ever had someone that was that well paid that sat on the bench.
Well, it's hard to find parallels because they never had anyone that well paid.
Yeah. Well, it's like the one that comes to mind is like Adam Dunn and Alex Rios in that terrible year, Ozzy's last year, but Ozzy was playing them to embarrass Kenny. So like, maybe a normal manager would have, like Kenny was saying, please bench them, at least according to the public accounts. Maybe that was Kenny being like publicly selfless, or, trying to, being very magnanimous with his, grace and saying like, you can acknowledge my mistake. But that was at least probably the parallel of most money left, how bad it looks in the immediate future. And like, they had something to play for, so it made sense to play him. And Ozzy was the one who's saying, we can't bench him because of his salary. So it was really just trying to embarrass the front office with playing him over and over again. Same thing with Rios for that matter. Pham, I don't know if there doesn't appear to be any overlap with Tony La Russa there in terms of St. Louis days. Not like Lance Lynn when he was a rookie. So there's not that, but I just wonder, like, Tommy Pham comes around and slaps Benintendi around a little bit just to try to, shake some life into him and see if that works. But yeah, it's all kind of ugly right now when it comes to Benintendi, because like he hasn't done anything to, impress fans either. Like I mentioned, like I haven't seen a Benintendi jersey.
I did see a jersey.
Strangely,
I did see a Benintendi jersey this weekend. Not a jersey.
Okay,
but we're making baby steps to a jersey.
Well, I mean, they're better quality than the jerseys right now. I would take a jersey over a jersey with what they're charging, but so that could just be like a very smart, cost-conscious fan. Either way, though, it's just amazing how irrelevant he is and like absent from marketing and everything like that. He's just a guy. So in terms of standing, it feels like he's just a guy, and it wouldn't cause shockwaves for the fan base saying like, wow, I can't believe they did that. It's just purely financial. And like Jeff Keppinger is the one in terms of like, cutting him with more than half of his contract left, but that was like a total of like $8 million or so that they cut him for. So this is a whole different ballpark.
In his last 6 games, Robbie Grossman has gone on base 15 times. It's 5 singles, it's 1 double, it's 9 walks. And Jim, you mentioned that. What happens when the walks dry up? But come May 1st, if Grossman is still this effective getting on base for the White Sox, and if Andrew Benintendi's OPS on May 1st is below 400, I got to imagine, like, you got to bench Benintendi and have Pham play left field. Even with the platoon, like, you need to see what you got in Pham, because if he catches on fire and he's hot for a month, then maybe that's how you could trade him before the deadline and you get some prospects, and you still got Benintendi to spell some time. But, like, I'm wondering if Benintendi's status as a starter, with his name always in the lineup, is in jeopardy? Probably not, though. Again, with the caveat, it's Pedro Grifol. And if Benintendi is Grifol's guy, then those whole conversations moot. And I don't know how Tommy Pham's going to get playing time. Maybe he platoons with Robbie Grossman, but the White Sox don't face that many lefties. And Grossman's a switch hitter, which we were told that he bats better against lefties. That's why this signing is a bit confusing to me, why the White Sox are making it now.
No, it's like, I think just a quest for bats, and Eloy will be, if Eloy somehow comes back and is hitting the way he does and like takes up all the DH spots, then it gets a lot more crowded. But I think there's just so much that can go wrong. Like, this is such a long season. Like, it's hard to believe how much season is left right now after 15 games, that you really do have to take it like a week at a time, basically, in terms of like who's actually safe. Because when the losses start mounting like this, and as much as the White Sox make Oakland their company in a lot of ways, like, they're not the A's. Like, they have a level of, I think, pride or ambition, or like Reinsdorf is more engaged than John Fisher is in terms of like what he wants to be seeing on the field. Fisher doesn't really care. He's just been angling for moving the entire time. Reinsdorf knows, and he meddles and such, and thinks he can solve it, and he can't. But like, that's why I think like it makes sense to sign him. Like, whether it makes sense for him to like, Pham to hit an opt-out date if he's not on, and just say like, no, I don't like this at all, put me back out there. Maybe that's a bigger question for him. But as Robbie Grossman showed, like when he signed, we're thinking like, where's Robbie Grossman going to play? And now here he is leading off every day and reaching base and making himself pretty much indispensable to the idea of the White Sox as a major league lineup. So things can change, I think, pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I think there's such a dearth of bats, and even kind of the things that are even feel established at this point, like Gavin Sheets just being like every day pencil him in middle of the order guy in the first 2 weeks. Like, he was unplayable. Like second half last year, I don't think they can put all their eggs in that basket. That like what he's even doing is cinched up. So there's such, like, betting on the health of Grossman. He's 34, as you're asking him to like play the field a lot more. Counting on like that there's going to be a consistent crunch when Eloy comes back. I think, or even just, what if Andrew Vaughn's the guy who loses playing time and Sheets starts playing first base more, and now you have the DH to work with a bit more than you anticipated. There's just, you're so, obviously the main issue is that they're getting like, or the issue they can't fix with these kind of signings is that they're getting nothing like up the middle, or really just from the infield entirely. And they've already kind of knowingly punted offense from the catcher position, that there's no real way to make it up by just adding like veteran cornerbacks over and over again. But like they've not gotten close to like this critical mass where they could really consider like, oh, this is going to be a huge problem down the road. I think it's much more of a cross that bridge when you get there, as opposed to like, well, I'm watching this team go 2-13. I'm watching us bat Kevin Pillar clean up. I'm watching us DH our backup, our third catcher, really, and trying to, and having him bat fifth and put runs together. That I think the possible drawbacks just don't compare to the, what you're already facing.
Well, let's move on for the Chicago White Sox. Maybe they'll win a game against the...
I will say this needless drawback thing. The main thing I get watching Robbie Grossman and take pitches and draw walks is, man, this would have been a great signing for that 2021 team. Like, he would have really tied the room together. I don't know why they traded their biggest trade chip for AJ Pollock instead, but Grossman would have just been a perfect balm to those impatient lineups that were actually good or talented a couple of years ago.
That is true. The White Sox could have used another OBP guy. Will the White Sox win a game in this homestand? We'll try to answer that question after a word from our sponsors.
Craig is usually a fan of water cooler talk, but it's draft season, and that's all anyone wants to talk about. The Athletic has loads of articles about this year's draft, but Greg doesn't have The Athletic, so now he's filling up his water bottle in the bathroom sink. Which, to remind you, is the sink people use after they use the bathroom. Get The Athletic and get the info you need to speak draft fluently.
Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. For the upcoming Chicago White Sox vs. Kansas City Royals series, Game Time has tickets starting at just $1. But you could treat yourself and grab a ticket to see Nick Nastrini's MLB debut 4 rows behind home plate for just $38. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code Sox Machine for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code Sox Machine for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. The Chicago White Sox have 3 more games left in this homestand as the red-hot Kansas City Royals visit. And the Royals are 10-6 this year. They're just a half game back of first place in the American League Central. In their last 10 games, the Royals are 8-2. However, on the road this year, they've struggled a little bit. They are 2-4. Your pitching probables for this series: Monday is Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. First pitch is at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Seth Lugo will be making the start for the Royals against Nick Nastrini, who will be making his Major League Baseball debut. Tuesday night at 6:40 p.m. Central Time, it's Brady Singer, who's got a 0.98 ERA this season, against to be determined for the White Sox. Wednesday's getaway day at 1:10 p.m. Central Time, it's Michael Wacha against Chris Flexen. And Nick Nastrini joining the Chicago White Sox, James. He's made 2 starts in AAA with a 7.71 ERA. He's just pitched 7 innings where he's allowed 12 hits. He's allowed 7 runs, 6 of them earned, 2 home runs, but he did strike out 13 and walk 3. Why is Nick Nastrini getting the call up now?
So, yes, you are operating off the probable starters that the White Sox put out, but post-game when they announced Nastrini, they announced that their probable starters for the rest of the series after Nastrini is they don't have the order set, but Eric Fetty is going to pitch one of the games, and the other game is still TBD. So Flexen is not in next series, which I think is pretty decent conspiracy fuel, along with his 8.78 ERA that, the storm clouds are nearing to maybe push him out of the rotation. They didn't seem very enchanted with how he looked in spring, and the early returns are not good. So with Nastrini coming up, you'll have 5 starters on the roster with Brad Keller and Knight Clevenger nearing. This seems like it could be like the first step. And obviously Keller would be on schedule and pitch 5 innings last week, where you could start him on Tuesday night, and he'd be on schedule. And then now you have kicked Chris Flexen out of the rotation. We'll see. For Nastrini, he was a guy that coming out of at the end of spring, they were talking about like he was going to make the roster. They felt like he was one of their best performing starters in spring. And, they were initially going to carry, skip him the first time because they had the off day and carry 9 relievers, and then they were going to plug him right in. At least according to the White Sox, the thing that stopped that was that he got sick. He had like 10 days off between his last spring start as he was recovering before he debuted in Charlotte. His first start in Charlotte looked pretty icky. His velocity was down. He got knocked around. He looked not ready. And then his second start looked a little bit more like Nastrini in spring, where there was some runs, there was some inefficiency, but there was a lot of misbats that makes you think like, oh, this stuff will play if we can get him online. And to that notion, this is just kind of what they planned, that Nick Nastrini had earned to be their 5th starter, and they're going to make him that. And certainly from checking in, what I've been able to do is that it's not, the indications are not this is the spot start and he's going back down, but like this is him coming up and enjoying the rotation. Obviously if he gives up like 10 runs an outing 2-3 times in a row, maybe they recalculate that. But I think this is fitting their kind of long-term plan. If this was a guy who they thought would take over a spot in the rotation in the course of the season and did enough in spring to say, hey, let's do it right now. Also, we traded away Dylan Cease and obviously don't have better options. So I think that's why. I would have loved to see him maybe hit his stride in Charlotte a bit more. Obviously, he pitched well down there last season. That would feel like overkill. I would love to see scouts who see him in person stop calling him a future reliever. That would be great, but maybe that will never happen until he proves it. on a major league level. But this is the guy who earned a spot and is getting a spot. Most delayed gratification is not usually a thing White Sox prospects have to deal with, but maybe Nastrini is just getting what he earned 3 weeks later, like a freelance writer can very much relate to.
So in a couple of weeks, to follow up on what you pointed out, James, could we be looking at a 5-man rotation for the White Sox where it's Garrett Crochet, Eric Fetty, Nick Nastrini, Brad Keller, and Mike Clevenger?
But did Soroka disappear in this
Soroka.
scenario?
I forgot Soroka.
Now, I think that's valid. Soroka's not necessarily had like a proof of concept start. I would say that they're pretty committed to, this was a season-long project they want to start. Obviously, not long-term committed to him. Obviously, as it's like a terrible month, 2 months, you start saying like, hey, this is just not working out. But he is at least someone I was less likely to think would get booted early on than Flexen if he came out and he's looked like the way it's 2 out of 3 blow up starts at this point. I would say that I haven't heard like talk of 6-man, but like they're obviously doing things to skip out or give extra days to Crochet periodically. They've done it at least twice already. They've Fetty's gotten moved around a fair amount as well, even though he pitched 180 innings last year. I would think that this would be a team that's less averse to having like a swingman or a 6th starter. I don't know what Keller or other options would really fit into that, but there's at least some inning concerns with Crochet, and the fact that like they haven't been getting 6 out of these guys very often, that maybe 6 starters or having somebody who else is available for length or having Chris Flexen as a long man makes some sense for them. But we're a little bit ways from that clearly shaking out. Obviously, also starters get hurt and these situations tend to settle themselves. The too many starting pitchers things usually get solved the way the too many viable White Sox bats problems get solved.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of Tanner Banks in the past week. Lots of Tanner Banks. Jim, Nastrini's first start in the majors. What are you hoping to see? What are your expectations against the Royals?
Well, my standard answer to that question is always 5 innings. Like if any rookie starter throws 5 innings, no matter how they look, that means he did something well enough, whether it's come back from a rocky inning or handle 2 times through the lineup very well and get pulled at the first instance of trouble the 3rd time through. Like all things are on the table, positively speaking, when you have 5 innings at least. So I would think 5. Like I do think, based on what he's shown at Charlotte, like I would say like something like 3 to 4 innings is probably more realistic, and making sure that you don't like try to demand too much of a guy who only has 2 starts at Charlotte under his belt, one he was under the weather for. When it comes to Charlotte, like and the timing of this, besides the fact that the White Sox don't have much more, and also the White Sox don't have really any youth on the roster to speak of. Like Nastrini is like as precocious as it gets, I think, for the White Sox when it comes to like youth and like upside, and like Lenyn Sosa is under 25, but it feels like we're very aware of what he can't do and what he's struggling to adjust to in the majors, whereas like Nastrini is like new. It's refreshing watching him struggle, and so it'll be a nice change of pace there. I wonder, like, if they kept him in Charlotte for much longer in the way that Charlotte can demoralize pitchers. Yeah, I was looking at Davis Martin's line, and Davis Martin between like Birmingham and Chicago, when he was kind of biding his time, waiting for a spot to open, like he had an ERA over 6 in Charlotte. And the White Sox still called him up because like the strikeouts look good, the stuff looked good. It was missing bats, giving up more homers than you think, but you give up more homers than you think every time you pitch in Charlotte, basically. Like very few guys get out of there alive. So the White Sox basically said, yeah, we'll trust what we saw in Birmingham. We'll trust what the metrics are saying. And he was fine until his last start ruined his numbers and kind of foreshadowed the Tommy John that happened the following year. But like he was a credible back end major league rookie starter going through the first time. So maybe that's what they're looking at with Nastrini, is there are some things to wrinkle out. There will be some inefficiency issues, or kind of like the Dylan Cease mechanical issues that he has to get better at fixing in real time versus needing an inning to reset or start to reset. but it's probably more useful playing in a major league stadium versus the bandbox at Charlotte and feeling like you're making progress versus having one bad swing and one 330-foot homer completely ruin your line.
And we'll see how Nastrini does. Of course, we'll be covering his start on SoxMachine.com. Follow James on Twitter at JRFegan. He'll have the pregame notes in the first pitch as well. And I know the White Sox don't give a lot of reasons to watch right now, but this is a good reason to watch. Let's see how Nastrini does at his Major League Baseball debut. We could all use some good news. So if he has a good start, maybe he does have that staying power that James alluded to, that he doesn't get Oscar Colossed. And then immediately sent down to Charlotte. Still don't know what that is about. And do you know what that's about, James, with Colas? Do they just not like him?
I mean, yeah, they're worried about like how prepared he was, and I don't think he made a lot of fans just not like off field or anything, but just like he looked unprepared frequently, or just rushed in his decision making offensively and defensively. And they thought they didn't do him a good service of trying to put him in the major league. So it's very much the idea that they were going to give him kind of a very long look at AAA to look meaningfully different or develop in a way that, you know, they didn't want to do that in real time in the majors. As far as like the wonkiness of calling him up for a day, it seemed more just like kind of emergency coverage before they made that bigger spate of roster moves. They were kind of staving off what they were doing as far as DFAing and 40-man moves until after the end of the road trip. And I think if you wanted to not make everyone weirded out, you would have picked a different person to come up on the roster for a day. But, you know, to some degree, it's harmless in the sense that like it wasn't a new option year they used or anything like that. Maybe they wanted to lower the average age of the roster slightly because Nastrini is going to be the youngest player on the team, and he's 24 years old. Their average age is close to 29, and you know they're completely terrible. So it's not the kind of you know, youthful mistakes that you know are charming in some way, like a toddler wiping out and falling on its face. It's more sad and horrifying, like a, you know, your elderly father falling on his face.
On that note.
So moving forward, that's the White Sox side. I want to end this podcast taking a look around Major League Baseball, and I want to draw attention to the American League Central. We thought that this was going to be the worst division in Major League Baseball, and it still could be. There's plenty of time. There's 145 plus games left to go in this season. But Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit are off to really good starts. Those are your first, second, and third place teams right now. And what's fueling the Royals, and this is a shock to me, Jim, the Royals starting pitching is really clicking to start this season. They are second in Major League Baseball in starter ERA at 2.46, and they're getting some offense as well. They're 10th in Major League Baseball in team OPS at 741. And for the Tigers and the Guardians, and you could throw in the Twins as well, the three best bullpens in Major League Baseball right now by ERA are in the American League Central. Detroit, 1.86 ERA. The Guardians, 1.88 ERA. And the Twins are third in Major League Baseball in bullpen ERA. And the Guardians' offense has been playing pretty well to start the year. They have a 734 team OPS. That's 13th in Major League Baseball. Jim, how are you feeling about Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit? Can all three or one of these teams make the Minnesota Twins sweat?
The Royals, like, I'm not quite sure, like, when you look at their starting pitching and their pitching success and their record, it's like, well, they're 4 games over 500 and they swept the White Sox in 4 games. So right now, I think like the schedule works in their favor that, yeah, they beat the terrible team we're watching. Always tough to do a 4-game sweep against anybody, but the sample sizes are small enough to where one 4-game sweep can be pretty outsized in the story of a season. And then here comes another series right around the corner as well, to where like they can pad their numbers further. You do have to beat the teams that are on the schedule. So, I mean, there's that. You can't take it away from them. But in terms of like where they're at, you know, reminds me a little bit of the 2003 Royals, who, you know, got off to a great start, fizzled out, finished in third place, over 500. It was like a brief, you know, time with a winning record amid like a whole bunch of losing seasons, like decades worth of losing seasons. but they didn't quite have enough. They did screw up the standings, and like they did, hurt the White Sox in terms of trying to beat the Twins that year. So they can do some damage. I think they're like a respectable team in a way that they weren't before. And I think Bobby Witt Jr. can carry a whole lot of that load, like a stars and scrubs profile or studs and duds profile. Like he's one of those stars that can make up for a couple of roster spots that aren't getting it done with the way he plays. So that's something they didn't have. And that probably elevates them to where the Tigers were last year at the very least. So you have I think as long as you have like those three teams all, the Guardians looking like their usual selves with like, how are they this good at run prevention? And you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say like, yeah, it's Wizards, I guess. But the Tigers, this has been like a long standing project, and they still kind of look like the Tigers of having some moments where you think it's going to click, and then having some moments where the offense disappears and you don't know how they're going to score runs. So I would say I feel like there's a little bit more variance with the Royals, feeling like they can light up a scoreboard the way that the Tigers can. I think there's more like a defined style of play that I think could work for the Royals that the Tigers don't have. So I think, I don't quite know who's going to emerge those two teams, but it feels like between the two of them, you have the White Sox who might be lucky to win like 55 games. And then you have the other four, which should be like 70 plus win teams, which is where they weren't last year. And that at least like makes it a not laughable division. It's only laughable, like say, if the Twins spend the whole season like this, hovering at 500, and then the flaws of the other teams kick in. But I think early on, they look like major league teams, which is like the Royals and White Sox weren't last year, and the Tigers did not have a major league offense.
James, how are you feeling about this Guardians, Royals, and Tigers teams to start the year?
It's wild that the Royals are like doing well starting pitching wise. What did they do? Something like dramatic, like I don't know, spend money on the rotation or something like that? Does that produce some sort of result that people are noticing? I'm a little bit bearish. Like I don't think necessarily like. I mean, I just don't believe in the AL Central in general. I think like high ceiling versions of like the Guardians that I would think don't involve like Shane Bieber blowing out in the start of the season or Tristan McKenzie like not quite looking like himself in the early going. So like, yeah, like I felt watching them that like their lineup's a little bit deeper with the second nailer. I think every team should look into cloning like one of their middle order hitters. Certainly the White Sox should think about that.
Two Corey Lees.
But I think it's definitely improved. I think like the middle group, this middle class of the division has like taken a step away or step up from the White Sox, where the White Sox have, fallen down their own stairs in their basement in a way where they're not even on the main level of what they're at in previous seasons. But I think the Twins are probably hitting as poorly as they possibly could with that group right now. Obviously, they've now been hit with injuries that won't make it easier to crawl out of that. But the level of production we're seeing from even a healthy Byron Buxton and a lot of like, core figures that have hit in the past, I think that they'll probably have a more severe bounce back up to normal than I'm counting on the White Sox offense doing at this point. And it just seems like, especially on the position side in their infield, if we get to a point where we're even seeing in the second half, like Royce Lewis back, that there's more offensive depth there than I think is really comparable. And, the Guardians, where they're relying on like Will Brennan to be a corner bat, or, the Royals after the top half of the lineup and, kind of continuing to rely on Sal Perez, who just got hurt. So I think those teams are clearly like two steps beyond or better than the Sox. And I wouldn't be surprised to see like all of them clear 70 wins. I just don't think like necessarily they're entering themselves in the AL like contention race and I would still expect the Twins to be the odds on favorite to emerge from the Central, even if I think these teams are like measurably and meaningfully better in a way that I think watching the Sox team makes us appreciate that how much better it is to watch a 70-win team than a team that we don't know if they'll ever win again.
Fangraphs, in their latest projections before the Sunday games, have the Twins still winning the division with a projected record of 83-79, but they have 80 wins for the Tigers, Guardians, and 81 wins for the Royals. So Fangraphs and their projection models are seeing a 4-team race now in the American League Central, which 83-79 winning the Central, I don't think would shock anyone. That's not a very quality record to win a division, but it would be an entertaining race if it does become that way where you have 4 equal teams, which I didn't think anyone thought there was 4 equal teams in this division. The Twins, they're not off to a bad start. They're 6-8. But the Kansas City Royals, entering this series against the White Sox, have the best run differential in the American League. And I'm sure they're going to be able to pad those numbers in the next 3 days. So the Royals are taking advantage of their schedule of having 7 early games against the White Sox. We'll see if it has any staying power. One last thing that I want to bring up for Major League Baseball, the best record winning percentage-wise in the National League is the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers are 10-4 to start this season. Christian Yelich has returned to his MVP form. He's got an OPS over 1,000 and he's hit 5 homers. William Contreras has an OPS over 1,000 and he's got 4 doubles and 4 home runs. Yelich and Contreras combined have hit more home runs than the White Sox have to start this season. Willie Adames, big Adames fan. He's going to be one of my targets for the White Sox this upcoming offseason as he'll be an impending free agent. He's got almost a 900 OPS with 3 homers. And they trade Corbin Burns, and now they got Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta's got a 2.55 ERA and 3 starts with 26 strikeouts and 2 walks, and he's got a 0.68 whip. They lost Craig Counsell, which I thought that was going to be a pretty big blow to the Milwaukee Brewers. And they've also lost front office leadership. He became the president of the New York Mets. His name's escaping me.
David Stearns.
David Stearns, which that was your guy, Jim, that you wanted to replace Rick Hahn. If the White Sox ever moved on from Rick Hahn, which they did, and they stayed internally. And
Rick's gone?
He's gone. Yeah, he's gone. But the Brewers, how do we feel about the Milwaukee team so far, Jim, to start the season? Do they have staying power? Because they've lost so much, but yet they continue to put out, so far, a quality product.
Well, having watched a lot of these guys come up in Nashville, Nashville is the AAA affiliate of Milwaukee. So I've seen like a lot of Sal Frelick. I've seen a lot of Bryce Terang. I've seen a lot of, not a lot of, did see Jackson Churio 2 levels last year. It's the kind of team like you wish the White Sox had, in that, young players who deserve to be getting long looks. And if they make mistakes, so be it. But like, they're going to do something sensational, at least like once a week, that makes you think, oh, I get it. I get why they're in the majors. I get why, the Brewers were willing to just, take a gap year perhaps to let these guys come up and play as much as they need to in order to shape their next team, with or without Craig Counsell. So I get it. I think like Yelich is probably I didn't count on him being, as good as he was a few years ago. Maybe that's your cautionary tale about Andrew Benintendi and not giving up on him.
Yeah. If Yelich could do it, maybe Benintendi could do it too.
Nobody question what I just said. Everybody pretend that it's perfectly sound, and we'll just keep running with that. But yeah, they have speed, athleticism. They can, come up with a few different lineups against lefties and righties, like shift guys around without having to completely platoon them and have at bats lost. So like it's a nice fitting lineup, the way that and I think maybe more so than other years where the Brewers have like pretty effective lineups, and you look at like the name brand quality and say like, I don't know how these guys are doing it. Like, I don't know how they're in first place. Like, I know they're decent pitchers. I know Rowdy Tellez is, he's a major league bat, but I don't think he's a major league bat for like a first division team. And yet the Brewers are a first division team. Like they've done that a lot over the years. And this is like a younger team to where like all these guys should be playing as much as possible and not just be scrap heap pickups from other teams that somehow make it work. So I'm kind of bullish on the Brewers, maybe not being this good for the entire season because they do have a lot of young guys and they've had some injury concerns too. But I understand like in a way that I don't understand for a lot of rosters, like why they're playing the guys they're playing.
That's the one thing that caught my attention in Major League Baseball. James, how about you? What's catching your attention early this season outside of Chicago in the league?
So I can't pick the Brewers.
Sure, you can pick the Brewers if you want to continue to add on and how great the Milwaukee Brewers are.
I think they're playing out of their minds. Like they're getting like sub-3 ERAs of like Colin Ray and what was the other like goofy one that didn't make any sense? Joe Ross. Like what the hell's happening here? Like the Thiago Vera, they got like 900 OPS. Like I think their roster is like good. They're going to compete in the NL Central and give the Cubs a hard time and drive them nuts, given that they paid their manager like $500 million or whatever. Like, I don't know if they're going to get 900 OPS like Adames, Joey Ortiz, Durang, and South Korea like all at the same time. What jumps out at me? I mean, I've been the Marlins. Like, one, I've been watching them a lot because they're the only like actual competitor with like the White Sox for like worst team in the league right now, it seems. But obviously with Tim Anderson and Jake Berger there, just like seeing what that's going to turn into, or what does it put Skip Shoemaker on the market for a manager at the end of the season. It feels like it has so many like little thought projects of previous White Sox seasons that it spares watching. For one, it kind of looks like crazy, and like how could it even maintain like this bad like the entire time all season? Like they got Luis Ariz like batting like 254, but things like Tim Anderson's power not coming back, or Jake Berger maybe sliding a bit more into like the high strikeout guy that he was with the White Sox. Those are kind of things that make me go a little bit about some of the early conclusions we reached. But it also seems like, as much as like the Brewers roster looks like this insane, like, what if you just turn down the difficult, like the Marlins roster looks like when out of the park like makes everything go wrong in your season, and the Brewers roster and their stats look like playing MLB The Show on easy right now in the terms of like, oh, everyone has 900 OPS. That's like how things would happen in the real baseball right now. So I think the degree to which that like has turned sour in a way that is beyond what anyone anticipated, even if there is some cracks there, kind of reminds me of the White Sox last season. So I'm glancing at it just because it has so many of White Sox from last season, especially Declan Cronin, which is who I think we all wanted to see how he'd pan out with another organization. But we can only give the fan base so much Declan Cronin as much as they demand about it every week.
Colson Montgomery likes Declan Cronin. Pick him deep in Jacksonville, so there's that. The AL West looking like a little bit of a mess right now. Like they're kind of like the Central for the time being. Like they've swapped bodies, I think, to where like the Astros were trying to avoid total calamity early on, and nobody's really impressing. The Angels are just kind of perpetually underwhelming / embarrassing. I am watching the Angels a little bit just because of Ron Washington. Just thought like we talked about this past couple of years, talking about like how he was maybe the one guy who I don't think he would have managed the White Sox in the postseason last year or anything, but in terms of like being the kind of players manager / teacher, but also somebody who can draw a line, or somebody who does seem to inspire players to get their best because they hate disappointing them. He seemed like the kind of credible manager who might stand the best chance of doing anything with the 23 White Sox. So to see him like coming up and like dealing with some pretty ugly baseball early on, and like issuing like a moratorium for Joe Adele for not sliding into second. Like he stole second. He thought he stole second standing up, and then the throw got there and he ran past the bag and got tagged out lately. And I think it was ninth inning 2 or some high leverage situation where sliding was completely inexcusable. And he basically said like that it isn't excusable. And we've had a conversation, but like, I don't want to see anything like this happen again. And, he's drawn like hard lines in some places and then played the hard ass at some point to where like, can he help the Angels not be the Angels anymore? I don't know if he has it enough, but like we've seen the kind of, ups and downs already of like, the Angels being themselves, and Ron Washington saying like, I don't like the way any of this looks. And so I'm applying that to like how he might have been able to help or not help last year's White Sox, or if like no matter who was managing them, it was just a matter of whether they won 72 games or 60.
Yeah, so often, like in post game after mistakes, I kind of like find myself wondering, like, what would a manager say that would actually be convincing or make people feel like it got addressed? And like I saw that Washington clip, like, oh, that was convincing. That's what that would look like. Wow.
Whereas like Kevin Pillar got picked off in the ninth inning, down 5, and Grifol said that's baseball or something like that. And like that's not quite the same thing. I mean, like it's the stakes aren't as high as they are with the Angels, but still, that was a clear case of getting picked off down 5 is more than just baseball. That is not having your head in the game.
I think Josh was okay with the play from what I've heard.
I got a little loud. I think I may have said you could walk straight from the clubhouse out to the street. You should be done with the White Sox. Like, I was very angry. At Kevin Pillar.
And then you're telling everybody at the end of the night that you love them.
Yes, I do. That's how I am. That's just how I am. The last unique, weird MLB stat, this I will call the Jim Margalus special. Tyler O'Neill of the Boston Red Sox, Jim. 7 home runs, 8 RBIs. He has 0 doubles, 0 triples.
Yep.
Because I know how much you love, like, it does look ugly. It looks ugly when you got 7 homers but only 8 RBIs. Yeah, it looks ugly.
I don't know if James is aware of this, but for anybody who isn't, like, I feel like homers need at least 3.5 RBIs per homer to produce an aesthetically pleasing line. So yeah, 7 and 8 does not get it done.
No. Marcell Ozuna's tied with O'Neill with 7 homers. He's got 21 RBI, so
That's
that
better.
looks more normal.
I'm aware of this, and I'm very much on the same side of this issue with you.
It's just weird. Like, he's 14 of 46. He's got 7 singles and 7 home runs. Now I need to watch Tyler O'Neill and the Boston Red Sox this week to see what the hell is going on, because this is a weird start, but it's been helping. The Red Sox are off to a good start this year as well. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. I know we talked a lot about the Milwaukee Brewers. A reminder, Saturday, June 1st, as the Chicago White Sox make their way to Milwaukee that weekend, we are hosting a tailgate with the first pitch being at 3:10. The tailgate's going to start around 12:30, 1 o'clock. We'll get those final details, but we're ironing everything out. We're co-hosting with our friends from the 108 and the Chicago Sports Bums as well. They're going to be helping out, cooking some food. They've been doing a great job with the Whiskey at Comiskey tailgates this season. If you are aware of their tailgates they host at Lot B at Guarantee Ray Field, it's going to be a very fun time. If you are interested in getting more information about this tailgate, I have put the interest form, inside the podcast post of this episode on SoxMachine.com, so you could fill it out and you'll receive future communications from me and what our plans are. But again, Saturday, 3:10 is the first pitch. The White Sox Brewers game. We are hosting a tailgate. Be great to see everybody up in Milwaukee. You can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can watch our videos and also listen to our podcast as well on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Sox Machine. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh, and of course follow James at JR Fegan. If you enjoy our work and you want full access to all of our coverage of this historical Chicago White Sox season, please sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Thank you to all of our new subscribers. Even though this team has been very bad, we continue to add more and more supporters on patreon.com. It helps us keep the lights on at SoxMachine.com, helps us support James so he continues to cover the White Sox and get great stories and access we've never had before on Sox Machine. Monthly plans start at $5. You can save with an annual subscription. Again, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. At hundreds of locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unifydhealing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.